You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
All right, what's going on, everybody? It's the Friday edition of Leafs Morning Take as we inch closer and closer to the month of June, closer and closer to the NHL draft, and also free agency. The next month's going to be a lot of fun. Nick Alberga, Jay Rosehill. What's going on, Rosie?
And closer to the Stanley Cup presentation. Are you on Team Oilers yet, or not so much?
I was asked this question last night. I guess it on a YouTube stream for the NHL, and I'm not. I don't want anybody but the Maple Leafs in Canada winning the next Stanley Cup. I'm sorry. I love Connor McDavid. Love some of the Oilers players. Big Adam Henrique guy who's still injured, not playing right now, but I just don't want to see it. I think we got a working rivalry with Oilers Nation here at the Nation Network, and I just don't want to see them hoist Lord Stanley. It's a long series. I thought that was a really good game, and all I could think about watching that game was like, man, how amazing. And maybe it's unfair, Rosie, to compare any superstar in the league to Connor McDavid, but after taking that 4-minute minor, it was like, I'm not losing this game. That's the way I witnessed Connor McDavid ascend to greatness. And the guy's at 75%, by the way.
75% of what?
He's injured.
Oh, he's at 75. Yeah, it seems like it. I know. That was devastating. 4-minute peeper. I really don't like that rule. 4 minutes for drawing blood. It's such a random, weird rule. And it's times like that where it comes up, like the beginning of overtime, the Western Conference Finals. Get a stick on a guy. Like, you can get the shaft of a stick and like bust guy's teeth out, bust his nose, and it's 2 minutes. And you can just clip a guy that has a little hamburger chin going on where a little bump always splits him open and there's some blood. 4. It's dumb. It's dumb. And it could have decided that game. I don't love that at all, whether it was the Oilers or not. I never really liked that. My nose used to bleed since I was a little kid at the drop of a hat, and I could barely get bumped with a stick, and it would be leaking out of a nostril. 4 minutes. And like I said, you could just tomahawk a guy across the jaw, and it's 2. It's not a great rule. I don't know where it came from and why it's still there, but it could have cost the series there. But yeah, Connor's ridiculous. I cannot believe he didn't bury that one. It's so easy in slow motion, but he looked like me gripping the stick and not being able to pull the trigsy, which is not Connor McJesus.
I like the stare down from Ottinger. I thought the goaltending was tremendous last night. Stuart Skinner showed me something in that game, especially early on, made a couple of crucial, integral saves. I thought Dallas bounced back accordingly. I think the big story in that series will be special teams. Dallas 0 for 5, but you're right. And to me, that was the big story in OT is McDavid taking the double minor, obviously, for high sticking. We've had this conversation so many times on this show. It's like it almost feels like a blade job back circa WWF 1997, where it's like anytime a player, I was laughing to begin with because Duchesne got high sticked, and these guys always to sell the call, they go down like they got shot. So what happens if Edmonton scores a goal there? Are we calling it back? Like, is that? I find myself more and more, Rosie, watching playoff hockey and hockey in general. I have no clue what the rules are. Like, I think it's insane.
What do you mean, Duchesne? What do you mean? Duchesne got high sticked, blood, went to get repairs. What do you mean?
No, but on the initial play, there was no call. He got high sticked off the opening draw of OT. He got high sticked. He went down like he got shot. The Oilers came on a 3-on-2. They almost scored. Gotcha. So you're telling me the Oilers score that goal, they're going to be like, no, we're going upstairs. We think he got high stick. Like, we can't do that. What are we doing here?
I know that's a tough one. And they make these rules in the in between CBAs and in the off season, and they're like, yeah, that sounds good, but you gotta remember, like, this thing's gonna be implemented at some point in time in the playoffs, in overtime. What if it's a Stanley Cup Finals? It's kind of like that Brett Hall goal where there was a time where you couldn't touch your blade of your skate even one little bit into the crease and score a goal, or it's called back, and it's overtime to win the Stanley Cup. Brett Hall buries one on Hasek, and his toe of his skate is in the crease. Should have come back. Are you going to stop the Stanley Cup winning celebration? Like, that happens like once every 15 years. It's tough. I don't know. Imagine they did score and they had to call it back. They would have to. And who's the deciding factor on whether they go upstairs to look at something or not? There's too many.
Man, I just don't know the ruling. Like, even like the OT winner, I feel like more and more every time there's an OT goal scored, we're waiting. There's like a
I know.
subdued
Fuck.
celebrate. Like, what were they reviewing? What could they possibly be reviewing on that OT winner?
That's what I was wondering. I'm like, are they calling like an offside from earlier on, which is also tough. I get it, man. I get wanting to get an offside correct. I get not wanting a big goal scored on an offside play. But when, like, how far back can you go and call an offside? And it's tough. I get both sides of it, but I don't know. I like golf in a way that it's very black and white. It doesn't matter. It's black and white. And sometimes the rules come up and bite a person, but they make it so that there is no gray areas. And it seems like more and more in the NHL these days, there's too many gray areas in the rulings.
There's some apprehension, sports-wise, around the world to go to technology and robots, but I think we're trending in that direction. I don't even know if you saw that clip last night in Major League Baseball where they somehow found a way to call interference on the on the base runner on second base, and it really felt like the base ump had dinner reservations. He's like, I got to get out of here. Like I don't know what we're doing. I think it's a difficult sport in general. Not trying to compare the MLB to the NHL, but some of the rules, like the fact that the fan base or the media covering the sport have no clue what's going to transpire next. I mean, that's very, very problematic. Producer Vic writes in as well. They thought Hyman high stick, touched the puck on the rim around. So I get that, but I just don't want to be like bewildered or stunned or like trying to figure out what transpires every time a goal goes in an OT. It goes in, game over, teams roll off the ice. We've seen way too many examples the last couple of years where we thought a game is over and a team will be halfway undressed and all of a sudden they come back on the ice. It happened in the Leafs game earlier this season in the shootout.
I know. Is it heading towards, anytime you score a goal, everyone just goes and lines up by the bench and they go check and then they announce it's a good goal and then you start selling? That would be
Yeah.
so
Like, what are we
weird.
doing? You know?
It's tough.
Yeah.
I don't know. I get getting it right. Like if Hyman did high stick that, I don't know. God, I don't know. It's tough, man. You don't want goals to be scored when there is an infraction, but if it's some tiny little rinky dink one that the refs missed, do you let it go? No, you should get it right, but then you're going to have to deal with that kind of thing. Oh, hold on,
Yeah.
wait, hold on. Stanley Cup celebration. We got to go see if that touched a guy's stick that was over the crossbar. Like, fuck, it's tough, man, and it's not a perfect system. I don't think it ever will be. For those reasons, you're going to get 6-1, half a dozen the other.
Yeah, no, I agree. But all in all, I thought it was a really good game. It's always fun to see OT in the conference finals. I thought the narrative built itself, obviously, with Connor McDavid taking the double minor. And then you just knew, you had that feeling he was going to solve it. As you referenced, we all thought it was going to be on sort of that, I thought it was great patience, but it's easy for me to say watching the game to go upstairs. But Jake Onger made a great save. I love the stare down on McDavid, but he just wasn't going to be stopped. I mean, when he took that penalty, again, all I could think about was the Maple Leaf superstars, and we got it from Austin Matthews. What was it in game 2? Is there really that moment in the Stanley Cup playoffs where the best player scored the most important goal of the series or the game? I know it's one game, but it's all I could think about last night.
I know that is the important thing about your important players at the important time of the season. High paid guys, you pay them to get the big ones. And yeah, I don't fucking know. Why can our guys not do it? How does Austin Matthews score 69 and just can't come up with the big one when needed on a power play in game 4, 5, 6, 7? I don't know what the answer is, but they're shaking it up and it's going to be a different mentality in that place. And I don't know. I kind of feel like there's going to be a different look. Like, man, it's been the same trying, struggles, non-struggles for a lot of years now. Like, just call it the Keefe era or the Dube, whatever. And I do agree with what they kind of said after that press conference that last year was kind of a feeling out period for Tree Living. Like, what is going on here? What is the vibe? What's happening here? And how does it all fit together? And he got that understanding. He got the same result that they've had the whole time. And I just kind of feel like it's going to be a different mentality or different character of this group next year. Maybe not like instantly, but I mean, I don't even mind if they start off like struggling a little bit under Chief, figuring out who the hell they are, because that would be a good thing. That would be they're changing, they're different now, and like flip the script a little bit from the regular season to the playoffs.
Sale writes in, thoughts on no distinction between minors and majors. Instead, it's just a penalty. And if it's something we currently consider a major, well, then it comes to a penalty with a 10-minute misconduct as well. I'm not sure I understand sort of the statement of the question, but I think the terminology can change. I'd be on board for that. But they go over the rules on a yearly basis, and they try to specify what needs tinkering and what doesn't. But I think more and more I find myself watching the NHL, and I find myself not knowing what's going to happen next. And in my world, that is that is very, very problematic. The other thing that I thought of quite a bit last night was just the need for saves at opportune times. I thought both Edmonton and Dallas got them. Stuart Skinner, as mentioned, one of his best games of the postseason period. Jake Ottinger made like 4 or 5 10-bell saves to keep his team in it in the third period, in OT. They did their part. Again, the margin for error is so razor thin this time of year, and not to rag on the guy again, but you can't be Ilya Samsonov. Remember game 3 I went to, I think it was against Boston, where it's like he lets this shitty little shot in. Like, you just can't do that. You need saves sometimes, and that reminded me last night again.
I know you're watching that game and it's just, you're just up on this pedestal of like, like who's going to get it, and back and forth and back and forth. And then like you let a sloppy one and it's just like, what? And like, just talk about the wind coming out of sails, and it just doesn't happen at this time of the season at this level. Like even Skinner, who had a question mark on him, elevates to like, no, like I'm making that huge save where there's a breakdown and a guy just walks down Broadway and one teases one. He just throws a pad on and just keeps the thing going. Where, on the other hand, a guy like, in Leafs history, would just come down the half wall and let a wrister go. And what the hell that went in, like, can't happen, man. Cannot happen. You won't get here.
Jake Lavoie asks a pretty good question, Rosie. Maybe you have an answer. When are they going to have ex-players have some input on these wacky rules? That's a good point.
Ex-players like
Jay Rosehill and Colton Orr.
No one wants to hear from ex-players. You're done, old son. Beat it. No, I don't know, man. What about current? Everybody, just a collective, like, throw out
a committee.
Yeah, polls, committees, voting. I don't know. It's not perfect, because every time you make a rule, there's going to be, there's going to be some on one side and some on the other. Like the 4 minute for drawing blood, to me, it's like that could just go away. There's no downside to it. I think it's stupid. Like, who's to say that the worst high sticks draw blood? They don't. You could get a dinky little runny nose and you could get a little split chin, but you break your nose and lose your teeth, and that's okay. It's dumb. But with the reviews, it's like, well, we're going to get it right. I mean, when they put that rule in place, it's like, no, we're going to get it right. And it's like, fuck, how do you argue with that? You're going to get it right and make sure that there's no, big game decided by something that shouldn't have been a goal. But on the other side of that, you're going to stop the celebration and you're going to go upstairs and you're going to call goals back that happened 2 minutes ago. Like, fuck, it's not a perfect system. I don't think it ever will be, but it does seem like there's quite a few gray areas right now. Goaltender interference, that type of thing. It's tough. And anytime you leave it up to a judgment call to a referee, you're going to get one game where it went this way, one game where it went the other, and people are going to go, what the hell? These things should be the same. But I mean, you're leaving it up to human error. It's always going to be an imperfect deal.
My least favorite rule right now in the NHL is that trapezoid. That was meant to deter guys like Marty Brodeur, it feels. And we're like 20 years later and it's still in the league, and they don't even call it anyways. Like, there's no point in having a rule if you're not going to call it. And the officials, if you watch on a game by game, they won't call it. They will not call the rules. So I don't know why the trapezoid is still there.
Yeah, I forgot. I remember when they brought that in. I might have been in the league, and it seems like it's just a forgotten thing. Like, never gets called. So why not just let them go out and play it however the hell they want? It's exciting when a goalie gets the hell out of the crease and plays in the corner, is scrambling back and turns it over, and there's an empty net. That's awesome. Let those goalies go do whatever they want. Hell, make it.
I agree with you.
Be able to hit them when they have the puck too.
Imagine. That would be amazing. At the Leafs Nation 401 here on YouTube. If you're watching right now, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. That would be spectacular stuff. And don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com. That's theleafsnation.com for the very latest. If you want to follow us on social, I'm at the Golden Muzzy on Instagram and Twitter. Rosie on Twitter is at J_D_Rosehill. You can find him as well on Instagram. The opening segment is brought to you by Greta Bar YYZ. For a good time, find Greta 590 King Street West, which is probably where I end up on my Friday night. Looking forward to that. Weekly specials, live sports, over 60 plus arcade games. Let the games begin. Go big. Go to Greta Bar YYZ. By the way, we mentioned Wing Wednesday. Dude, the line was through the roof on King Street West. Like, it was far down. So a lot of people receptive to Wing Wednesday. And of course, the added bonus of the first 200 people getting wings for a year at Greta.
So there was a line down the street?
Oh, yeah. It was massive.
That's an unbelievable promo, man. 200 people get free Wing Wednesdays for a year? That's insane. Wicked. I love it. I want to go to that place. Like, fly me out. Let's go. We're dicking around too much. Get me out there.
We're going to get Rosie in the mix next year, folks. Rest assured, we plan to do way more at Greta Bar in the fall and in the next season. So Rosie will be in the mix. We'll have some meet and greets. You can get an autograph if you want from Rosie. So that's coming up next year in year 3 of Leafs Morning Take. Can't believe we're through. We've been here together for 2 years and approaching year 3, but so be it. We got a poll up, by the way, if you want to answer here in the YouTube chat. Again, at the Leafs Nation 401. What should the Toronto Maple Leafs do with Mitch Marner? Very well put by producer Vic, by the way. A resounding 71% say trade him, 15% extend him, and 15% play out the season. How would you answer that, Rosie?
Mm-hmm. I just think trade him ASAP. Trade him ASAP. Let him. I mean, it's just. I think you got to break up that core 4, and that's the only one that can do it. And it happens to be the guy who I don't think is going to adopt the Craig Berube mentality. I just don't think he has it in him. I think Vancouver's dealing that with Elias Pettersson right now as well. It's just some guys are really skilled hockey players, but don't have that jam of playoff style mentality. I think Mitch is one of them. I think you can open up his cap space, get some return for him, obviously, and kind of rework this team in a way that it obviously needs to be reworked. It's been 8 years of just shitting your pants in the playoffs. Let's do something different. And yeah, you might have to give up a good player, but you're going to get some in return, and you're going to get to go shopping with his massive cap hit, and you're not going to have $50+ million dedicated to 4 players anymore. It just doesn't work. So move on. Thank you for your time. No hard feelings. Go have a great career elsewhere, and we're going to retool this roster.
Man, as we've disclosed many times on this show, we both watch Overdrive. And I thought Jeff O'Neill yesterday put it perfectly, and you've said it before too. Just the level of entitlement in this modern day player that wasn't there, say, 20 years ago. Because they were talking about, you talk about the Vancouver Canucks, so they had like locker room cleanout day. And it was sort of bewildering, some of the stuff coming out of Vancouver, especially a very, very positive season where they lose, but like the crowd's still celebrating because nobody expected them to make it to the second round of the playoffs. Never mind the Stanley Cup playoffs. And some of the comments from some of their marquee players, Elias Pettersson, like he's got that like Mitch Marner vibe where it's like a screw all of you. It's like, I'm better than you. And it's weird. Like he signs the extension. He's not the same player. Now there's like a phantom knee injury. O-Dog was pretty much saying like, why can't a player just come out and be like, you know what? I need to be better. Like, when's the last time we heard that in Toronto where a star player came out and was like, it just wasn't good enough. I know I get paid lots of money. We just don't get that anymore. It's cut from a different cloth than it was in your vintage, Rosie.
Well, JT Miller did that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's about it. I mean, you can count on one hand players that'll do that.
And followed it up with a big performance and an overtime winning goal. I love that stuff. But you just think about their life. Like, think about a Mitch Marner and Elias Pettersson. Like, every step of the way, they've been a superstar. I mean, you go back to like the brick tournament and the Pee-wee shit and blah, blah, blah. And Mitch Marner's just superstar. Oh, he gets to junior. He's a superstar. Oh, he's a first round draft pick superstar. Gets right to the NHL at a young age. Gets a big contract superstar. Gets an all-star pick superstar. Wins a trophy. He's a superstar. And then when it's like, okay, now you're a superstar, now the expectations, now the contract's there, you have to keep elevating, you have to keep getting better, you have to keep being a superstar. But if you're just like happy with that, and then you don't do well in the playoffs, which honestly, that's all anyone cares about, especially in Toronto, and you don't do it, people are going to be on your case. And then they're looking around going, like Elias Pettersson, all through his junior stuff and playing, in Sweden and the SHL and superstar, and everyone's stroking him and he's so good, and they're not really expected to do anything in the playoffs. But you get to the point in your career where you're expected to elevate your team to superstar status and to get to XYZ in the playoffs and get to the Western Conference Finals and win a Stanley Cup and have the big goals and lead the team and be the superstar, and you're not. And all of a sudden, it's the first time in their lives where they're like, why isn't everyone stroking me? Why isn't everyone telling me how great I am? People are telling me I'm not good enough. I've always been good enough. I've always been better than everybody. Now I'm not. Now you're not stroking me as a superstar. And they get their back up and they do an interview and go, F you. You were the guy that said, I'm not good. You're the guy that said, I'm not good enough. You're the guy that said, I need to be better. I've never been told that. F you. I'm a superstar. Ask anybody. I've been told it my whole life. And now all of a sudden you're getting pushback and you can tell they don't like it. And they're like, what the hell is this? They're not used to it. And it's not having to go through a lot of adversity. It's being so goddamn good at hockey your whole life that everything has just been one step, and everyone just sits back and goes, wow, you're amazing. But it's a little bit different in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's an extra step that I think they're struggling with, and they're not used to the adversity. Let's be honest. They've been so good at hockey. Credit to them. They've stepped through every stepping stone and jumped through the hoops and been superstars because they're super good. They've had nutritionists, they have sports psychologists, they've had trainers since they're 10, 12 years old. They've been ridiculously good at their craft. And now all of a sudden they're running into a bit of a wall, which is the Stanley Cup playoffs, which is more difficult than anything in hockey. And it's not going well for them because they haven't learned to go over that adversity and to have that pushback and to have to really grind and to do things that are out of their comfort zone. And it's the first time they're really like, what the hell, man? I can see it on their faces. They do not like it. But I mean, that's part of growing. That's part of being an adult, being a pro. You got to get over that hump and you got to get yourself out of your comfort zone and find a way like the guys before you did.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I mean, sometimes the ridicule is warranted. Like, nobody in their right mind can watch Mitch Marner. I know there's been people out there and Elias Pettersson and players of that where it's like, why are you naysaying them? Why are you ripping them? Like, it's completely warranted on both fronts. You watch Pettersson, the guy was an absolute ghost here in this run for the Vancouver Canucks. Mitch Marner, again, just couldn't get the job done when it mattered most for this team. He picked up a couple points, but nowhere close to the guy we've seen year in and year out in the regular season. And my problem is, like, you're quick to accept that contract. You're quick to smile and be like, I want $13 million a season. The moment it gets tough, you don't want to answer questions anymore. You don't want to be that guy anymore. You get pigeon face. You don't want to say, like, Patterson's demeanor kills me, dude. Like, to think that guy's extension hasn't even kicked in yet, and that's the way you're acting. Like, that's the guy I think's going to lead me to the promised land. You are not Nathan MacKinnon. I know I always compare things to Nathan MacKinnon. I love intensity, man. Like, that's my brand. That's my style of hockey. You watch some of the dogs in this league, man. You watch them on the ice. You watch them in warmups. They're not going to be beaten that night. I don't get that sense with anybody on the Maple Leafs. There's a couple guys maybe in Vancouver. JT Miller's that type of intense guy where accountability is big. I wasn't good enough. I'm going to be better next game. I just don't get that feeling when I see guys like Pettersson and Marner, unfortunately. But they make so much money. I think it's fair to throw blame their way.
Yeah, and people will pull up like their points and, oh, he's got this many
Yeah.
points. You're telling me he's not good. It's like, no, I'm not saying he's not good, but these guys are your best players until you need them to be. And that's where they fall short. It's like, yeah, I know you have a million points and everything like that. But if that isn't getting us to the promised land, then we just simply need more. We need that one bloody goal where it's an absolute dogfight in game 5 to get yourself up, 3-2. You need that guy to score the overtime goal, to prevent the goal being scored, to be that dog in overtime, and to just dig that puck out and just fricking bury that massive cluster in front of the net and get that for him. But you're not even in the game. We haven't even seen you. You can't even find a way to get the puck on your stick. That's not good enough. I don't care if you have 45 goals in 54 playoff games or points or whatever. That's great. No one's saying you're a bad player, but you're not, we're not giving you the franchise tag if you repeatedly show that when we need you to really be that best player, not only do you not quite get there, you're nowhere to be found. Sorry, I can't put all my eggs in that basket. And that's like the new, I don't know if that's been a theme in the past or not, but usually those guys with the franchise tags are the guys that step up and win you the series and whatnot, and not the guy that gets you to the playoffs and everything with this ridiculous regular season and then go away. That's the opposite of what I'm not paying that guy $7 million because I need you to be my best player at the right time to win the big one. And if you just are not even in the bloody building, that's a huge problem. And guys that are kind of those soft little skilled fresh face guys tend to fucking be that guy that can't get her done in the playoffs.
Again, I just think it's funny. They're so quick to request this and that and no movement clauses and give me 13 sheets a year and give me a max term. And it's like you ask one simple question: where were you? What's going on in the playoffs? Don't got an answer, man. The Pettersson quotes in the last week alone, man. It's like, man, if you're Patrick Alvin or Jimmy Rutherford right now, are you like, holy fuck? Like, what kind of mistake did we make for the next decade here? It's concerning, but I can't say it's just Vancouver. Again, not to compare it. We're not old by any stretch, at least in our opinion. Neither of us are to 40 yet. Like, it just, these players are different. It is so difficult to motivate professional athletes, specifically hockey players right now. And accountability is a word you can look league wide, and there's probably a handful on a short list of guys who will be accountable for their actions. Crosby's one of them. McKinnon's one of them. Miller's on that list. Guys who will take ownership for just being good when you got to be great. And unfortunately, guys like Pettersson and Marner don't want to step up to the plate and be like, you know what? I'm the guy. Like, how many years in a row have we watched the Leafs and the season ends and they're like, yeah, we're going to try to rectify things in the off season. We're going to be better in the fall. I'm tired of that. Somebody's got to step up. You got to tell me, hey, this isn't good enough. This locker room's not getting the job done. It's just a different era. That's probably what I translate it to the most.
It is a different era. It's everything in the league's a little bit softer. It's just a different ilk, right? These guys were raised differently. I mean, I was walking through the mall last week in Edmonton, and just some of these, these younger guys, they're just, I don't know, it's like they're just a little bit softer and they're less invested in, going through the wall and being tough and being strong. There's just less of them, and you're trying to motivate them. That being said, you can learn it. It's not like Pettersson is a write-off. There's guys, I mean, he had good playoff series before.
Yeah,
he's not a write-off, but it's just like he needs to know that that's not good enough. And we wouldn't even be talking about him right now if he came out and said, I'm not good enough. I need to elevate my game. I'm going to, take this experience and understand what playoff hockey is like. I'm going to work on my game. I'm going to get bigger and stronger, and I have more to give. It's just like, wow, yeah, you're an unbelievable player. You're saying all the right things. You've got the big contract. We've got you locked up, and yeah, we believe in you. We'll ride with you. We know you can be better. It's not easy. Like, let's go. But these, guys don't really say that much anymore. No. They kind of like, what are you getting on my case for? Like, screw you. I did good. Like, I did good. It's like, no, you didn't. You didn't do good. I know you have a big contract. I know you've put up lots of points, but you didn't do good. Doing good is getting it done. And when you fall completely short and you get really close, but you don't get over the hump and you weren't even a part of what you did do, sorry, dude, you're supposed to be the guy to get you over the hump. You would have been the difference in that series, Elias Pettersson. You would have gotten to the Western Finals if you were rocking and rolling the way some of the guys do in the league. You didn't, so you're going to get the heat. And I don't know. It's not like, I don't think it's a write-off, because I think you can learn from your mistakes and reinvent yourself a little bit.
There's always that defensive front in general. I think a perfect example of what you're saying, Sam Bennett. You remember Sam Bennett on Calgary? They're like, we need to change the scenery. It's not working. Goes to Florida. The guy's probably top 5. You can question, does he cross the line sometimes? Maybe, yes. But, man, I'd rather take a team full of Sam Bennett's than a team full of Mitch Marners. As crazy as it is to say that, dude, in the playoffs, I love the way Sam Bennett plays the game.
Yeah, and I knew I was thinking of an example like Johnny Gaudreau being in Calgary. He's Johnny Hockey, and I mean, man, he put up some points, very skilled, unreal. But my God, was he terrified? Like, literally terrified in the playoffs. Like, the look on his face was, God, like, someone's got, like, I don't want that puck. I don't want the puck. It's too hard. It's scary. And that's like, you look back at, the Scott Stevens eras and some of these, we've talked about it before. I don't know if they're kind of taking the testosterone out of these younger
I don't
generation
know,
or
dude.
what, but like I said, I was walking through the mall and like I can't tell the difference between the guy and his girlfriend. They're just like skinny, like dressed the same, and they have a little cutie in there. I'm like, holy fuck, is there any men anymore? But like, and you look at Johnny Gaudreau and Elias Pettersson and Mitch Marner, and they're just kind of like, a little scary. It's like, man, let's get some men out there again, like the
Yeah.
McKinnons, who are like, give me the hard stuff. Have someone come at me. I'll put him on his ass. If he puts me on his ass, I'll get up twice as hard and go get that damn thing. Like, I want that mentality on my team. Every
Yeah.
time a team wins the Stanley Cup, they have that mentality, not the Johnny Gaudreau mentality.
I think there's a systemic issue too, where you have one good season in the NHL off your ELC, you're getting paid. And again, I want to reward winning. Like, again, we're never going to go back to what it was 20 years ago, and you can blame the salary cap all you wanted. But like, you pay guys so quickly in this league. You score 40 goals in a year, you're getting 7 sheets, 8 sheets a year. Like, it's just a different time from that perspective too, where it's like back in the day, and you can speak to this. You had to earn every 100 grand you got on your contract, where it's like now you score 15 goals, you're Bob McMahon, you're making over $1 million already.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I was part of it too, my era, but the era
Yeah.
before, when I was playing, like, you talk about Jeremy Roenick talks about it, Chris Chelios talks about it, like, you can come in as like a superstar first pick, make the team, grind your way up. I mean, Brendan Shanahan talks about like making the league and being in the fourth line and having to earn it, having to fight guys like heavyweights like Berube and the stuff that Shanahan did. Shanny was one of my favorite players growing up because, I mean, he would fight the heavies and snipe the big ones and go to war and just be that guy in the playoffs that's just like, doesn't matter if it's blood or sweat dripping off the end of your nose, you're just going as hard as you can. Doesn't matter what is presented to you, whether you got to go to like battle these big guys or score the big overtime winner. Like, those guys were ready, and it just seems like these guys, yeah, maybe they've been handed a little bit too much. Maybe they've been stroked. I've talked about minor hockey before and how screwed that is with parents and just the entitlement that comes with
Mhm.
these really good hockey players from a young age. It's starting to show. And yeah, the salary cap doesn't help when you pay those guys. Like what I was talking about with the Chelios and Shanahan era, you had to be like a 23, 24, 25-year-old guy who has paid your dues, worked your
Yeah.
bag off, proven that you've got it, and then finally you get your contract. Now they get it right out of the gate. And I mean, it's just like anything else in life. If the motivation isn't there, you're going to be a little bit lackadaisical and have a reason to not go all out if you've already been given the reward.
Hey, not to throw shade at the industry we work in, but I recall a time where I was getting coffees for people, and I was interning at some radio station in Toronto at 4 a.m. while doing school. Now they come into the industry. I want $100,000 tomorrow at 22. I want to be on TV. I have a bunch of different examples of people. I have stories and stuff. It's just different era in general. Modern day as opposed to now, it's just night and day. It is what it is, and you can translate that across a variety of different occupations, man.
I know. I think we're like the old men yelling at a cloud, but I mean, I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
it
yeah,
is true, and I expect change and I expect evolution and things to evolve, generationally. And I try not to be the older guy that's yelling at the younger generation, because every single generation has done that, and
sure.
all generations have been fine, and no one's going to be the generation of the World War II or grandparents and stuff. I get it, but you also have to point out the obvious. And
Mhm.
there is a sense of entitlement with this generation, lackadaisical, maybe a little bit of laziness and entitlement. It is there, and you can see it in all different factions of society. And it's just I think you're allowed to point it out and say, yeah, it certainly is different, and here's maybe why. This guy gets a $60 million contract out of the gate. Sorry that he's not going through a wall for you. That might be part of a problem.
Yeah, it's just a sign of age, unfortunately, man. I have this conversation a lot with my folks when I visit them like once a week, how it's just like this entitlement. Nobody wants to work for anything anymore. Nobody wants to work, period. If you can work on OnlyFans, you just do that for the rest of your life. Like, it just, again, and again, we were brought up maybe in a different era where it's like, hey, you're working at 14 and that's just the way it's going to be. You're going to learn responsibility, where it's like now kids, there's like 23-year-olds that don't have jobs, real jobs. And it's concerning for like our kids. I'll be honest about that. But Leaf Nation 67 in the chat has been waiting a while. asking this question at the Leafs Nation 401. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Would you rather Saros or Theodore for Marner? Do you have an answer for that?
Jose Theodore is playing still?
Shea Theodore in Vegas.
Good question, man. How old are they?
So I think Shea off the top of my head is going to be around 30. I think Saros is 29. I think it's going to be difficult to answer the question first to find a perfect match for a Mitch Marner trade. I know it's already driving me crazy over the last week. Some of the, the insiders, quote unquote, not even just social media stars in different markets, wondering, what could be next on the Marner front. You have everybody on social media speculating, given their best trade proposals. You're not going to find the perfect match. So ultimately, it makes sense to you. It comes down to, like, do you want cap space or do you want like one player back for him?
I don't know. Saros just kind of stands out. We talked yesterday about how important a goaltender is and how you need that. And I mean, Joseph Woll could be that guy, but I think, if you look at Boston, it didn't really hurt them to switch hit two monster goalies. And I mean, I think you need to back Woll up with someone with some pedigree, and Saros is certainly that. And if Woll turns out to be this monster and stays healthy, well, hell, all the better, right? And that's a good problem to have. So that kind of stands out. But yeah, I think there's a few things, man. No matter what, like, you're going to open up some cap space no matter what you get. You're not going to get like $11 million back in assets. Yeah. So you're going to have some room to work. And if you get a goalie, you can get a D-man and vice versa. I think there's room to do well. And I mean, if maybe you get some picks or some prospects or something in there too, and that doesn't even, then you got more cap to work with. So it's interesting prerogative. I mean, both of those options would be solid upgrades for the Leafs, I think.
I love our girl Tammy just beaking Leaf Nation 67 in the chat. Now you can stop having an aneurysm since they're answering your question. He asked about 73 times, so I thought I'd give him an answer. Thank you to producer Vic, by the way. Shea Theodore is 28. Saros is 29. The other problem I have in general, like in a nutshell, a lot of Leafs fans don't watch games at a market. Like, it's fact. You have a lot of Leafs friends. I have a lot of Leafs friends. They just throw out wild proposals without knowing, who the other player is. People are shit talking UC Saros. Go watch a Predators game. Go talk to your old teammate Hal Gill. Chris Mason's a former goalie. He covers the Predators. This guy's all world. Like, we're not talking about Martin Jones here, with all due respect. We're talking about UC Saros, a top 10, maybe a bona fide top 5 goaltender in the league. And I think people are throwing like wild and wacky trade proposals and being unrealistic, but that's who you're going to get. This is why we cover the biggest team in the NHL and the biggest market. That's where you're going to get. But I just want to throw that out there. I just don't know how many games out of market people actually watch in Leafs Nation. They know the Maple Leafs. That's about it.
Yeah, and maybe just the Maple Leafs home games too. And I don't watch. Exactly. I mean, if Minnesota is playing, take your pick, I don't know, Buffalo, like, I'm not watching that game. I don't know the league inside and out. I don't know guys' leagues, and I don't claim to. I don't throw out proposals very often. I don't throw out mock trades very often. I like the eye test. I just kind of am of the ilk of, we don't know. Like, put those guys together and we'll see what happens. Like, no one knows what chemistry is going to find. I don't know these guys personally. I remember when I was in the league, I kind of knew every single guy in the league and what they did, and I was totally finger on the pulse. But, it does seem like some guys throw out these mock trades, and it's like, are you even aware of like what planet these two guys are on? And that's Twitter for you, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Let's move on to something else I want to talk about. Frozen pucks are awesome when they're in the back of the other guy's net, but that doesn't mean you'd want to eat one. That's why Wendy's only ever uses fresh Canadian beef that's never seen the inside of a freezer in all their burgers. Whether you order a Baconator, Dave's Single, or even a JBC, you only ever find fresh beef that's real juicy and loaded with fresh toppings. So download the Wendy's app, check out the latest deals, and order a burger that's only job is being delicious. So our very own Frank Saravalli dropped a piece earlier today, top 75 UFAs with contract projections. Go check it out over at dailyfaceoff.com. In conjunction, by the way, courtesy AFP Analytics, a consulting firm that focuses on player valuations. So some projected salaries for some players with attachment to the Maple Leafs. Want to hear a couple names?
Yeah.
So we'll start with the two big ones with the Maple Leafs, and I'll attach a number, and that pertains to their number on Saravalli's top 75 UFA list. Tyler Bertuzzi's at 17. AFP projects a 4-year deal at 5.25 mil per season. Would you go that far with Tyler Bertuzzi?
The Domi at 2 by 3.5 is so much more attractive. Like, I got Domi higher on my list than Bert
Yeah.
right now, to be honest with you. And to have him at just about $2 million less. I know it's only a 2-year deal, but I don't know. That's a big. I don't like the 4-year deal. I would like to put him at a 2-year deal and see how he does at 4.5. Kind of makes more sense to me. I don't know. Sometimes I think I'd like to pay this guy, and they're like, "Whoa, no, he's worth his market. You'll lose him for that." And it's like, I just hate paying guys for a long period of time where you're kind of like, yeah, maybe, hopefully, and then maybe he goes the wrong direction, and you're like, and we're totally screwed. It's really tough job, man. What do you think he's worth, Bertuzzi? You like to bring him back?
I would love to bring him back. I think he's worth 5.25 or 5.5. You get in a bidding war, I could see somebody getting a 5.756. Again, I'm not against analytics. I respect AFP analytics and what they've put forth, but this doesn't take into account bidding wars. There's no way Max Domi's getting a 2-year contract. The only way he's getting 2 years if he pegs Toronto and says, I want to go there. There's nobody in their right mind that's going to watch the Leafs in the playoffs and watch Domi the way he played and say, you know what, let's give him 2 years at just the shade over what I think he made 3.5 last year, something around that. It might have been 2.5, but I mean, he's due for an increase, and I think there's going to be money out there for Max Domi. I think he gets at least 3 years in his next contract. I think he's more likely than not to re-sign with the Leafs, and it's more so about the AAV. They just can't afford Tyler Bertuzzi over $5 million, unfortunately.
I know. And you think Domi would sign 3 years at 3.5?
I think it's going to be 3 times 4. Like, that's probably
Yeah.
what the Leafs and him might put together.
I think
I
his
don't
numbers
see
start to look
3.5 as a
good.
number. I think there's going to be too many teams involved. Like, just again, Domi's that type of guy you want in the playoffs.
I know, and we just talked about it the whole beginning of the show. Like, this, who has that dog in him? And Domi absolutely does. He's fearless. He loves it. He absolutely loves being in the grind, being in the fight. He may not be the most incredibly skilled guy in the world or the toughest, biggest, fastest guy in the world, any of that stuff, but he is quite good. He's got his compete level is super high, and I think that's what we can chalk it to. And scouts talk about that all the time. How's his compete level? How's his compete level? And when you go out there and, kids watching, if you're playing junior and you're playing a Sunday game on a ho-hum day and everyone's just kind of taking the night off. I mean, imagine you're a scout looking down at the ice and just some guy is just running around like a bulldog, hitting guys, diving for pucks, second efforts, back checking their absolute bags off. That stands out like a sore thumb. That is the holy grail to scouts and GMs, a guy that's just going like a dog when nobody else is, and that'll get you drafted. That'll get you to make teams. Guys talk behind closed doors all the time is, what's his compete level like? And Max Domi's compete level is up here, especially in a Leafs uniform. He takes tons of pride in being on that team. It was his childhood team. His father was a legend for them. Sign him up 100%. I don't mind if it starts with a 4, because I think he's a guy that's going to be a big part of something special if that can happen in this town.
Took a while for Max Domi to find himself in Toronto, but the second half of the season, I thought he was excellent. And I'm with you. If you have to pick between Domi and Bertuzzi, it's easily Domi in my world. I think A is going to get paid less, and B may be a bit more consistent, weirdly enough, than Tyler Bertuzzi. There was just major swings in Bertuzzi's game. Not to say I don't like the guy. I just think you got to be careful with how much money you're giving him on a per season basis. Some names externally that have been linked to the Maple Leafs already. Brandon Montour, as we see right now with the Florida Panthers. Again, there's going to be a colossal bidding war with a right-handed shooting defenseman who can run your number 1 power play unit. The projection here from AFP is 6 years, 7.7. I know Montour is a bit older. I could still see him getting 7 years from somebody and maybe $8 million. Like, there could be a bidding war there. Matt Roy, by way of Los Angeles, number 11 on Frank's list, by the way, 5 times 5.8. I think some of the guys we mentioned right now are going to be the fallback options if you don't get Montour, if you don't get Pesce. But Matt Roy at 5.8. Nikita Zadorov, as we talked about, could be looking at 6 times 6, but on Frank's list here, number 12, 5 times 5.3. Would you go that high with Zadorov at 5.3 mil per season?
5.3. I mean, you look at TJ Brody making what, 5.5 this year?
Yeah.
And I mean, Zadorov is a major upgrade. 5 years at 5.3. I think there's going to be a bidding war there, and people are going to get.
Sure.
He bumped his stock up huge these playoffs.
Takes one team to be like, you know what? I'm giving you 5.5. I'm giving you 5.75, and that's the way it's going to be.
Yeah, I know. I don't mind him at 5. I just think about like TJ Brody's making 5.5. And
Yeah.
would you rather have Zadorov? I just think he brings a little more. He's probably only getting better. He's not perfect. He's not like super skill guy, but you know, if you can mold him into one of those defensemen that just takes care of his own, gets the puck up to the right guys when it's a scrambly play, he makes the smart one, like even window and out into the neutral zone, live to fight another day, and then just be that super physical, beastly guy that no one likes to play against and can jump on pucks in the offensive zone too and keep it in there and just be smart, not get caught, not get chasing. I mean, fuck, he's worth $5 million probably, but yeah, I think that someone's going to overpay for him, and he's a guy that could be one of those stories.
Look, traditionally, I think teams make their biggest mistakes. I mean, there's so many examples of this on July 1. I think patience is a virtue. There's not really, you look at this year's free agent crop, and I'm like, oh, like aside from Montour, aside from Pesci, there's not really a name. Gensel, I love Jake Gensel. I don't think he makes sense for the Maple Leafs. I'm not rushing to sign any of these guys, man. I know what Zadorov brings to the table, but if somebody wants him for 5.5 or 6 a year, that's your problem. I'm sorry. Like I know what he brings, but I think you have to be smart, especially if you're a team like the Maple Leafs and the salary cap. Sean Walker's at 14. Of course, he went from Philadelphia to Colorado at the trade deadline. 3 times 4.65. I think he's a name to monitor for the Maple Leafs. He would make sense. Brett Pesci, I think, is a guy that the Maple Leafs will be very, very interested on. It sounds like he's going to get to July 1. The projection from AFP is 5 times 6.25. Another guy I can see getting to 6.5. $7 million, a shutdown guy, shoots right. Like there's a variety of reasons why, again, these evaluations are fair, but it doesn't throw everything into the equation. I think it's important to bring that up too.
Yeah, for sure. They're not written in stone. We talked about Perron yesterday, and it went online, and some people were thinking that would be an overspend for an older guy that's just not going to get anything done. I don't know if I see that, man. I mean, they got the projections at two years at $3 million. I mean, seems like $3 million is kind of a piss in the bucket these days. Like it's not that big of a deal for a guy with his pedigree that has had success. He's won. He's veteran presence. He plays with some jam. He's got skill. He's played under Craig Berube. $3 million. I'm like, Jesus, like how could you? I think that makes total sense.
There's no way he's getting $3 million a year. It's going to be like at least 4 is the starting number. And maybe Alan Walsh is watching right now, but there's no way Alan Walsh's agent. There's no way Perron's getting just $3 million per season. Again, these are pretty accurate, but again, you got to throw other factors into the conversation. Speaking of Perron, by the way, did mention on yesterday's show, I'm going to try to chase him. We have him confirmed for Wednesday. So David Perron's going to come on this show on Wednesday. We're going to ask him about Craig Berube. He played for him, of course, in St. Louis, and we're going to ask him about free agency. You never know. There's a shot maybe could be interested in the Maple Leafs here.
And I'm going to put him on the spot and ask him if he wants to be a Toronto Maple Leaf.
That's your thing.
Just like
Hey, David, I know you're from Montreal. Do you want to be a Maple Leaf?
We'll get the PC answer, which is fine.
Yes.
But planting seeds, baby. Planting seeds.
That's what we do. That's what we do. 2 other names to monitor. Jake DeBrusk, 5 times 5 and 5.8. And then Victor Arvidsson, who Dave Pagnotta brought up on this show a couple of weeks back, 3 times 4.75. So keep some of those names in mind. Job well done by Frank Saravalli and AFP Analytics for putting out a pretty thought-provoking piece as we start to put together projections in time for July 1, in time for the NHL draft. As mentioned, free agency 38 days away. Can't believe July 1st, man. 38 days away. We're going to have a special for you on July 1, by the way.
Yeah, we always do every year. It's creeping up for sure. It'd be interesting to see. July 1's so much more exciting than like the draft. You know, they're actually players. I really think that if you're going to get a Mitch Marner deal done, you have to have it done by July 1 so that you know what you're shopping for. Like you can't go into August and everyone's picked through, and then open up something with Mitch Marner and then be like, who's left to sign with this new, $5 million in cap space that we just opened up? Oh, they all got picked through. Like, we would have gotten X, we would have gotten Y, we would have picked that guy, we would have paid this guy that contract. It's like, shit, like, have your ducks in a row, and the timeline needs to line up for you to build this roster as strong as you can make it.
It's wild, though. I saw some people speculating that it could take time because there's some bonuses to be paid out or something. I don't know anymore, man. These guys are making like $2 million a day, it seems, at this point. Like, it's insane to me how many players get paid based on potential and less on what they've done in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But so be it. It's the era we live in the NHL. It's time for the last call, brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Final tonight. Rangers hosting the Florida Panthers. Of course, Florida winning game 1, 3-0. Do you like a response tonight from the Rangers?
I do, but I mean, the way that Florida team's buzzing and Bobrovsky just makes me think, holy shit, could they sweep on the road and go back home with a 2-0 lead? I think it's very possible. What is 365 got her at? I don't know, man. I've been honestly filling my pants with betting lately. It's not been great. I'm not in a position to give advice at this moment. My gut feelings are not doing well. They're both at -110 right now. Typical.
Yeah.
You got to think they would split and even it up and come out huge. But I mean, did you like Kreider's I think his comments about like the ice was shit and stuff, and it's like, and he did say like that's what you expect this time of year, and both teams are playing on the same ice, and it's like, then why even mention it? Like, yeah, MSG's ice can be really shit. They've got hardwood on it most of the time. It's hot and getting muggy out there. Like, I get it, but why even bring that up in a loss where you couldn't finish and solve bobber and mention that the ice was shitty? Like, that's just a bad look. I don't know, man. I don't have a bet right now. Where are you leaning towards on that one?
I love the Panthers long term, but I think there's too much value at even money on the New York Rangers. I think that's the bet, the Rangers to tie it. I mean, I've believed in that team. They won the President's Trophy. I know Florida's a tough opponent, but this is home ice. You got to win this game, plain and simple. So give me the Rangers at even money.
I like it.
If you lose this game, if you're New York, the series is done. I'm sorry. Like, you're not. Like, we said this the first round. Remember, I said it against Boston. There's no way Toronto's winning 4-5 against the Bruins, and that's the way it played out. I know they made it to Game 7, but I sort of feel this way, especially with the Panthers going home too. I think it's over. They need to split the Rangers tonight.
Yeah, they do. I just think they might not. I don't know. I might take the Florida Panthers, man. I think I thought this was going to be a battle. It still could be, but I just think they're so good, man, that they could take 2-0 at MSG and go home and finish this thing in like 5 or 6 and just be waiting for the Cup finals like last year to get the job done. They're dirty. I've been pumping their tires since last year, as they are designed for the playoffs, and every guy on that roster is on board to go to war, and they're doing it.
Do you like Dallas to rebound in Game 2 tomorrow?
Yes. Yeah, I do. Yeah. I think they'll solve Skinner. I think they'll get the job done and split.
I still think the Stars are the better team in that series, but it just shows you like the margin for error in the playoffs. You need that big time goal. They got it from McDavid. Amazing pass by Evan Bouchard. So looking forward to Game 2 of the Western Conference Final, and looking forward to the weekend, Rosie. We'll reconvene on Monday, bud.
Okay, let's do it. See where these series sit and see if there's any new news in Leafs land. I would expect if anything's coming, it's going to be at 5 p.m. on Friday today.
Yeah, probably. I hope not. Just don't say that. Don't manifest that into existence after everything, all the heavy lifting behind the scenes last Friday. It was just torture, but so expected from this organization. So waiting for the next shoe to drop. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Great questions today at the Leafs Nation 401. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. Leafs Morning Take wherever you find your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com. Thank you to producer Vic. Many thanks to Jay Rosehill. I'm Nick Alberga. Talk on Monday. Take care.
You're welcome.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much.